on the Daily Debrief.
I wasn't breathing. It didn't make any noises.
Is this teenager a baby killer or a scared mother whose daughter was stillborn?
I never meant to kill my baby.
The defendant's police interview and the coroner who said this.
I was just the middleman, essentially, in relaying that information to Lieutenant Fain.
Plus, the woman sexually assaulted by Stanford student Brock Turner is going public, and a record fine in the Larry Nassar sex abuse case. Also, federal drug charges over the death of hip-hop artist Mac Miller. The Daily Debrief recaps the day in court. It's Thursday, September 5th. Welcome to the Debrief, everybody. Welcome, Gwendolyn. Welcome, Mike. Brian Buckmire will be with us in just a moment as well. The defendant's own words were at the core of an Ohio trial involving a cheerleader accused of murdering her newborn baby 2 days after her high school prom. Prosecutors say Skylar Richardson learned she was pregnant at the doctor's office, made no follow-up appointments, and did nothing to prepare for the baby's arrival. They say she killed her child after giving birth alone at home, and then gleefully announced that her belly was back to normal after her family accidentally learned of the pregnancy from the doctor. Richardson's defense, however, says the child was stillborn and that the defendant buried it without telling anyone because she was afraid of social backlash. Richardson faces a total of 5 charges ranging from aggravated murder to abuse of a corpse. The possible punishments, if Richardson is convicted, are on your screen. To secure a conviction on the top charge, prosecutors must convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt that Richardson killed her baby with prior calculation and design. Investigators tested for the presence of blood underneath the defendant's bed. They used a product called Blue Star, which illuminates possible traces of blood. Here is both direct and cross-examination about precisely what they found.
This illumination was almost immediate. There was no prolonged, and it had a very intense illumination, which that means that there was a large concentration of blood in that area.
Did you draw any conclusions from looking at this picture, sir?
Well, we had been told that Miss Richardson had given birth to a child, and when I saw this, I immediately thought that this was probably the location where that child had been laid upon.
Why is that?
When I saw this, I could see the outline of a small torso.
You mentioned something that looked like a torso in the bedroom?
Yes, sir, I did.
Yeah. You didn't mention that in your report.
I was asked what it looked like, sir.
I don't know if anybody told you, but Skylar bled for 3 days after she gave birth. You aware of that?
I was not, sir.
If you were made aware of that, would all this blood that you found be unusual?
Depending on where she bled, sir. May not.
All this blood could be from different times, correct? You can't date
I don't know where the blood came from.
You don't know where the blood came from. Fair enough.
The local coroner testified about the excavation of the dead infant's remains.
I continued with the excavation or the removal of the bones from the actual site. Again, some of the dirt had already been turned up, so I continued in the exact location, removing additional bones. And in the process of going deeper, there was some small amount of residual decomposed tissue that was admixed with some of the dirt, admixed with the bones. Dr. Beth Murray, who's an anthropologist, she told me that there were some of the bones that she felt were very dark. This discoloration could be from thermal injury. With her telling me that, I ended up calling Deputy Fain and told him, said, Dr. Murray has a concern that some of these bones, not many of them, but just a few of the bones, had a very dark color, and she was wondering whether or not this could represent some type of thermal injury. So, I mean, I was digging through stuff, sifting through things in the fire pit, but I did not find anything that resembled any type of human remains.
To be clear there, it was the forensic anthropologist, Dr. Beth Murray, who said she thought the bones looked charred. Under cross-examination, the coroner called himself the middleman in relaying that information to detectives.
I called him while I was in the room where she was doing her examination. I mean, I called as soon as she said that. thought he should know what her concern was.
Yeah, and according to Detective Carter's report we have here, she says that you actually said that the remains of the infant had been burned. Might you have said that?
I said that Dr. Murray was suspicious that there may have been thermal injury. I never would have gone out on a limb to say myself that they were burned because, I mean, they were discolored, but she's the anthropologist, I'm not. So that's why I defer to her to make that sort of interpretation, and which I was just the middleman, essentially, in relaying that information to Lieutenant Fain.
Gotcha. So she's wrong in her report saying that you had advised Lieutenant Fain that the remains of the infant had been burned. That's an incorrect statement.
Yes, that's
Thank
incorrect.
you very much.
The jury of 7 women and 5 men spent most of the day hearing from the defendant herself through a black and white police interrogation video. Here is how the defendant described the birth of her daughter.
I had the baby and
Okay, hold on a second. When you say you had the baby, where were you?
I was in my bathroom.
You were in your bathroom? Okay, were you on the toilet or in the bathtub or on the floor?
Toilet.
Were you seated on the toilet?
Yeah, and that's when I had the baby.
Okay, how did you know you were going to have her? Did you have
I
any?
could feel it, and something needed to come out. I could feel it.
So you felt that feeling?
Yeah.
Do you know, have you ever heard the term when people say their water broke?
Yeah, I don't
But
know
you didn't
that. I don't
feel
know.
that. Well, and I think you'd probably
I don't
know
think.
if
It just came out when I
Okay.
pushed, and it was breathing. It didn't make any noises. I never
that you
heard
can't.
her.
I understand that. No one here thinks that you did, Scott.
I put her in my arms, I tried to hold her, and she's breathing. She doesn't have a heartbeat. She's not breathing.
How did you, I know the breathing part you can kind of tell and see. Did you ever hear a cry or a whimper? When you say she didn't have a heartbeat, did you try to check it?
I tried to feel. I hope I
Tried to
pushed
feel
too
in her
hard.
chest.
I didn't mean to push hard. I just felt.
Okay. And were her eyes open or closed?
They were closed.
They were closed.
Richardson said she buried the baby in the middle of the night in her own backyard. And here, the detective doing the interview tried to relate her case with that of his own daughter.
So you decide you got to bury her. How did you even think about that? Did you know where you would bury her?
I just wanted to bury her in my backyard so we could put flowers on her.
Okay. Kleenex or anything?
No, it's okay.
Did she grab a Kleenex? Are you sure? Well, just let us anyhow. Yeah, we are, and I know I feel bad because I'm making you talk about like the worst parts of it now, and.
Do I get to go home still with
What's
my
that?
family? Do I still get to go?
We're going to talk to him. Yes, we're still trying to figure out exactly. So what happened?
I'm sorry.
So, okay, Skylar, she's Kate, your Skylar. I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize, okay? Like I said, I mean, I hope you believe me. I'm telling you the truth about my daughter and everything. So I've seen her go through this, so I know you're going through a horrible thing, and you've had to do it all by yourself. So you wanted to bury her in the backyard again and do flowers. So is that what you did? How did you take us through that? So what did you do? Did you bury her immediately?
I tried to, but soon after.
We will have more from that interrogation later in the broadcast. But first, 3 attorneys are here for analysis. Mike Koribanics and Gwendolyn Lindsay-Jackson are here in studio with me. Brian Buckmire is in our newsroom. So Brian, what do you make of that blue star image that police had when they checked for the presence of presumptive blood in the bedroom? Did that look like a torso or not?
I'm not sure. I mean, you might got to squint and turn your head a little bit to the side to figure it out. I think it's one of those diagrams you see an ink blot and the doctor asks you, what do you see? There's going to be some that say they see it, and there's going to be some that say they don't. And I think that's going to lead to reasonable doubt when you have kind of a mixed bag like that.
Yeah, I mean, you can have the defense get up there and say, wait a minute here, the witness is stretching, the prosecution is stretching. That is a possible argument that could come up during closings here. So, Mike Koribanics, the interview with the defendant. The tone, some people have said, sounds like it is off. And what do you make of the police saying, no one here thinks you did anything wrong, no one here thinks you hurt her, and then they slap 5 charges? Is it legally okay for the police to be that tricky?
Well, it's okay for the police to lie, but I think this violated the Miranda warnings, because he's saying it's okay. So now, once you say it's okay, you didn't do anything wrong, now you're telling the person you're interrogating that there's no criminal exposure. There's a difference between lying and saying there's no ramifications. He's basically saying you're not charged with a crime, and that's wrong.
Well, Gwendolyn and Lindsay-Jackson, what do you make of that? I mean, this is one of these things that just irks criminal defense attorneys. Your thoughts?
Oh, yes, it does. It definitely irks me. And then I thought I heard him say yes when she asked, can she go home? So in my mind, I'm thinking she might be asking, am I still in custody? You know, that kind of thing. So it's very tricky. It does irk me. And I didn't like the way that they went at it, trying to get this information with all these dirty tricks.
Brian Buckmire, I want to ask you about what the coroner said there, being the middleman about the remains possibly being burned. It sounded to me like the coroner was trying to be very clear what he said, but that the coroner's own statements got messed up somewhere in the police reports, and that makes the police look sloppy, at least in my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, you got to remember the coroner's from a different department than the police officers and everyone else. So this is kind of a bit of a CYA. It's kind of saying, hey, I did everything right. Someone else misinterpreted my findings. I'm sticking by what I said. If someone else messed it up down the line, that's different than me. I'm not getting in trouble for what they did.
Mike Koribanics, let's broaden this out a little bit and talk about that interrogation more generally. Some people were saying the tone just felt like it was off in that. Was the detective who was doing the questioning just overly combative, coming across with a false sense of sympathy? I almost took it that way. How did you take it?
I think that was a video on passive aggressive. His voice was passive, his questions and his poignancy was very aggressive, and I think he stepped over the line.
Is it a recording that ultimately helps the prosecution more or the defense more, Gwendolyn, Lindsay?
I think it helps the defense more because it really shows that they're kind of like stooping like below the line. They're hitting below the belt. Here you see, you know, the detective talking about his own daughter, trying to melt with this, to merge the minds or melt with this woman and get her to talk. And he's using all kinds of dirty tricks, and I didn't like it. And I think that this is going to serve the defense very well.
Well, still ahead here on The Debrief, that moment from the Skylar Richardson interrogation where she says she didn't kill her baby. Plus, the woman who was sexually assaulted by Stanford student Brock Turner is stepping out in public and telling her story. That and many more cases when we return. Time now to check in with Chief Investigative Correspondent Brian Ross with what he's working on for tonight. Brian, what's in store?
Well, thanks, Aaron. Tonight, a very 21st century kind of crime wave. America got tough on kidnappers after the infamous Lindbergh baby kidnapping case in the 1930s. Now, almost 90 years later, there's a new set of kidnappers demanding big ransoms and getting away with it. They are computer hackers who break into the computers of police departments, hospitals, city halls, holding hostage vital documents and files, and it's happening in cities and towns across the country. In Atlanta, the city was hit last year with what was called the Sam virus, freezing the courts, airport Wi-Fi, online bill payments, footage from police dashboard cameras.
It was extremely disruptive to the city, but this has happened to people worldwide.
Federal prosecutors have now indicted 2 Iranians, charging them with the so-called Sam virus attack. And tonight we'll talk live with the mayor of a Florida city that paid almost $500,000 to hackers to get their files back, something the FBI, Aaron, is not very happy about. That's coming up tonight on Brian Ross Investigates.
That's a lot of money. We will be watching for you in about 15 minutes, Brian. And now for a check of other cases making headlines today. Michigan State University will pay a record $4.5 million fine due to its handling of the Larry Nassar sex abuse case. The U.S. Department of Education says the fine involves violations of the Clery Act, which requires campus crime scene statistics reports. Nassar is serving multiple state and federal sentences after he admitted sexually abusing girls and women. The former president of the university is herself facing criminal charges for allegedly lying to police. Detention 4 years ago is now speaking openly about her ordeal. Chanel Miller spoke with 60 Minutes on CBS in a soon-to-be-released report about her own new book, which is titled Know My Name. Miller is the woman who Stanford University student Brock Turner was convicted of sexually assaulting back in 2015. Miller's then anonymous victim impact letter to the court went viral online after the judge in the case gave Turner what many considered to be a light sentence. The judge was recalled from office by California voters. Prosecutors have charged a 28-year-old California man in connection with the death of hip-hop artist Mac Miller. Miller died of a drug overdose, and federal prosecutors are going after Cameron James Pettit, whom they say supplied Miller with pills laced with fentanyl. Connecticut authorities have filed new charges against the husband of a missing woman after his girlfriend said the missing woman's body was in a pickup truck. Fotis Doulos is accused of tampering with evidence in the case of his estranged wife, Jennifer. Fotis' girlfriend, Michelle Troconis, told state police that Doulos had his truck washed because Jennifer's body was in it. That's all according to a new 38-page arrest warrant. An attorney for the husband said people are making up lies about his client to deflect attention from themselves. Back now to the case of Skylar Richardson, the cheerleader accused of killing her baby. During a police interview, Richardson was clear at many points that she did not commit murder.
I never meant to kill my baby. I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't.
I understand. Now, when you threw away the towel that you used to clean yourself up, did you also throw away the towel that the baby had been wrapped in? Or was it the same towel, or was there two towels?
Yeah, I threw it away. I'm sorry.
Oh, you don't understand that. I have to step out for just a second, okay?
Can I talk to my parents?
In just a minute, but I've got to step out just real quick and take a phone call
stay the
now.
Oh, honey, you just take a deep breath, okay? I'm going to stay in here with you, okay?
Please, just be honest. What's going to happen?
I don't know, okay? I'm in here observing.
Jail?
No. You're not going to jail today. No.
No, and I'm not going to.
Just relax, okay? Listen, just relax, okay?
I don't want to go to jail.
I know you don't. Just relax,
I don't have to go to jail, though, right?
Listen, I understand that you're sorry, and I understand that you're upset, and I understand that you didn't want this to happen, okay? Just take some deep breaths, okay? Everything's going to be okay.
I don't have to go to jail?
You're not going to jail. Okay, we're not taking you to jail today. You're not going to jail, okay? So just...
What's the worst that's going to happen?
Honey, I don't know. This isn't my case, okay? He's talking. He just wants to get some things straightened up so that we can figure out exactly what happened.
During that interview, the police used a common tactic. They left and allowed the defendant to speak with her parents. But, of course, police kept recording. These conversations shed light on Skylar Richardson's relationship with her mother and her father.
You lied to me about him. You lied to me about so much, and now you're going to lose brain over this. Skylar.
Okay, honey. You did lie.
Well, not about that. I just hurt her.
Here's the thing. What's done is done. But it would have been so much better had you told us. So much better. And I don't know what's going to happen next. They're over there digging up something in our backyard that we had no idea. Your mother didn't even know you were pregnant. Can you imagine the absolute horror that we just went through not knowing what's going on?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Skylar, you're not going home with us.
Honey, don't start that.
Skylar, I'm telling you, it makes me sick. The cute little bag of popcorn you had, you'll never finish.
Honey, stop. Please stop.
Mom.
Do you have any idea how we feel?
I had to comfort that baby by myself.
If you could have gotten us, Skylar, I would have helped you so many times. I told you, if you just tell me, I'm always going to be here for you. I've always told you that I love you. How do you think I feel at the thought of losing my baby?
I'm sorry, Mommy.
Here for more analysis on this case, Brian Buckmire in our newsroom, Mike Koribanics and Gwendolyn Lindsay-Jackson here with me in studio. So, Gwendolyn, is that interview heartbreaking, is it damning, or is it both?
I think it's both. I think it's heartbreaking. It's damning because, you know, you have the parents that are acting like detectives, saying she's lying, basically being very callous. And that part, I think the callousness is heartbreaking. That part, that's why I think it's kind of a mixed bag. That will help the defense because it shows that, look, she has to put up with these types of parents. How else would she have behaved? How else could she have behaved? She had to hide this from them.
Brian Buckmire, I want to ask you this one as well. Who did the worst damage in that interrogation recording? Was it the defendant or was it the parents? And does the distinction matter?
So I think that the worst damage was actually the mother, if I'm going to get really specific. I don't think the father really did much damage. And when I talk about damage, I actually think it's damage for the prosecution's case. I'm going to agree with Gwendolyn. I mean, I'm going to play this as a defense attorney, and I'm going to have my heartstrings pulled a little, but I'm going to come back and say, you know what, this is why she couldn't tell her parents. Her parents are saying, I love you, you could have come to me, you could have told me this, but at the end of the day, it doesn't seem like that's the situation that happened here. These are very cold parents, and I wouldn't have told them if I crossed the street the wrong way, yet alone if I had a child.
You know, and it raises all sorts of issues involving parental consent. It raises privacy issues. You know, did she necessarily have to tell the parents? And these are all side issues that are apart from the legal issue here, and that is whether or not, for the top charge, a premeditated murder took place. Mike Koribanics, listening to these recordings, is there evidence of premeditation, or is it just a sad teenager who is going through a horrendously difficult time?
I don't think there's any evidence of intent or things of that nature. I think there's evidence that there was a child who had a baby and had no one to turn to. And the question still is, was this baby born stillborn or not?
We can jump in with some more analysis here. Gwendolyn, Lindsay-Jackson, the police saying, no, you're not going to jail, basically sitting down on the floor, lowering the one interrogator lowering herself below the eye level of the defendant there. You know, again, we're back in the whole area of police trickery. They're saying that, but the reason that they're in that room is because they're trying to build a case, and now the prosecution wants to send this defendant to prison for life.
Absolutely. And, you know, they did a very good job of lowering her guard. And as you said, even like getting lower physically, talking to her, holding her hand, consoling her, trying to get as much information out of this young, afraid 18-year-old to pretty much charge her with murder.
Brian Buckmire, what bothers me about these interrogations when this happens, and we've seen similar ones before, is when these sort of tactics are employed, and then at one point, the defendant says something like, oh, well, maybe the baby was alive, but very briefly, and then the baby expired. Because that's what prosecutors are trying to hang their hat on here, saying, oh, no, wait a minute, the baby was born alive. Was the defendant really admitting to something there, or was the defendant just trying to go along with what was being fed to her?
I think the defendant is definitely going along with what's being fed to her, because at some point in time, you've got to say, you know what, how do I get out of the situation? She keeps saying, I want to go home. I want to go home. Can I see my parents? Am I going to go to jail? And she's realizing that telling the truth isn't going to do it. It's going to be giving them whatever they want. And again, you've got to remember, police are there to prosecute, not to help in what they're trying to say there.
Exactly. Yeah, Brian Buckmire, panel, thanks a lot tonight. We're out of time on the Debrief. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 5.